What if your worst enemy in trading isn't the market, but your own mind? What if the difference between the trader who makes it and the one who doesn't isn't talent or strategy, but the ability to coach oneself day after day, even in silence? If you've ever closed a good trade too soon, chased a breakout that wasn't real, or watched yourself spiral into overtrading after one loss, then you already know this truth. Trading success isn't built on a holy grail system. It's built on inner discipline. The candles don't lie, but they also don't care. It's not about fighting the market. It's about learning how not to sabotage yourself. Every morning you sit down in front of the screen, you are facing yourself. Not just price action, not just charts. Yourself, your fear, greed, doubt, ego, and the story you carry from yesterday. The Daily Trading Coach by Dr. Brett Steenbarger opens with this razor-sharp insight. You must become your own coach. Not just read about psychology, not just watch videos. You must internalize the ability to interrupt your emotional spirals, to reframe your thoughts, and to rewire your behavior patterns. This is not passive learning, it's daily internal practice. Coaching yourself isn't optional if you want to last in this game. It is survival. And that's the theme of part one. You don't wait to become a better trader. You train to become one. Daily. Because performance is not some rare spark. It's a ritual. You are what you repeatedly do. Steenbarger doesn't offer abstract theory. He offers actionable rituals. He speaks to the trader who's done chasing edge after edge, system after system, but keeps crashing emotionally. He speaks to you, the one who wants trading not to feel like a war anymore, but like a craft. And the path forward, he says, begins with coaching. You begin by reclaiming the first minutes of your day. You start with a mental warm-up, not on Twitter, not checking headlines, but checking in with yourself. What is your emotional temperature? What expectations are you bringing to the session? The book suggests you anchor yourself with intention. What is your purpose today? Is it clarity? Is it process? Is it resilience? These are not mere prompts, they're psychological alignment tools. Because if you don't lead your mind, it will follow emotion. Then comes the self-talk. Most traders spiral here. A red candle, a premature exit, and suddenly the voice in your head becomes brutal. You always screw this up. You'll never make it. Steenbarger warns, that voice isn't feedback, it's self-destruction. Coaching is the opposite. It's deliberate self-guidance. You can't outperform your self-image, he writes, which means if your internal voice is cruel and chaotic, so will be your trading. Your journal isn't just for setups. It's where you record the voice in your head, track it, and reshape it. You become your own therapist, your own trainer. But this isn't fluffy self-help. It's structured, sharp, and grounded in neuroscience. When you recognize a destructive urge, impulsively entering at the top, moving your stop in fear, you pause. That moment is your cue. Not to judge, not to panic, but to intervene. Coaching begins in the moment you notice the pattern. Steenbarger emphasizes this. The faster you spot your patterns, the sooner you can change them. Most traders wait for pain to teach them. But you're learning to teach yourself before the market has to. He draws a powerful analogy to athletics. You don't walk into a gym, do random reps, and expect transformation. Why would trading be any different? You need structure, repetition, feedback, daily review. Trading is not a game of guessing. It's a craft of refinement. You don't just show up to trade. You show up to sharpen your mindset. Each day becomes a rep in your training log. Win or lose, the metric is not just P&L, but personal progress. And here's the mindset shift that changes everything. Measuring success not by whether you made money, but by whether you coached yourself better today than yesterday. Did you react less impulsively? Did you execute your plan despite fear? Did you recover from a drawdown without self-pity? These are the questions of a growing trader. And growth, unlike outcome, is always within your control. You think you understand yourself until you start writing. That's the second revelation from the Daily Trading Coach. The act of journaling, Steenbarger insists, is not a diary. It's a mirror. Every time you document a trade, a thought, a mistake, you take a layer off the mask. You go from emotional fog to emotional clarity. That's the power of writing. Not to impress, not to record, but to expose your own blind spots. You might already know what setups you like. One, but do you know how you act after two losses in a row? Do you know what you tell yourself after a missed breakout? Have you noticed whether you tend to size up impulsively after a win? Most traders journal inconsistently, reactively, or worse, not at all. But if you don't write it, you won't see it. If you don't see it, you can't coach it. Writing is the first tool of awareness, and awareness is the foundation of change. Steenbarger isn't talking about recapping charts. He's asking you to track yourself before, during, and after the trade. You're not just noting prices, you're observing your mood, your confidence, your thoughts, your tension. He calls it self-observation in real time. It's a practice of attention because the mind doesn't like to be watched. It slips into habits, shortcuts, and biases the moment your awareness fades. Journaling brings it back into view. And here's what makes it potent. The journal becomes a dialogue, a place where you stop reacting and start responding. You ask, why did I take this trade? What was I feeling when I hesitated? What story did I tell myself before I broke my plan? These are not confessions. These are investigations. And the more you investigate, the more you regain control. Over time, patterns emerge. You'll notice certain market conditions tend to trigger anxiety. Certain news headlines make you reckless. Certain timeframes drain your focus. These aren't random. They're your psychological fingerprints. And once identified, they can be managed. You can build rules, routines, even physical habits around them, but only if you spot them first. Journaling is how you surface those details. Steenbarger offers a simple tactic. After each session, write 3 things. 1, what did I do well today? 2, what would I do differently next time? 3, what did I learn about myself? These 3 prompts alone can transform your evolution because they force you to look inward, not just outward. They create a daily feedback loop, and when practiced consistently, they rewire how you think and trade. But here's the twist. Writing doesn't just help after the fact. Steenbarger encourages pre-market journaling too. You set intentions, you write down your emotional state, you anticipate challenges, and you decide in advance who you're going to be that day. This is mental preparation, not market analysis. It's athlete-level mindset work, and it's the difference between reacting to your day or shaping it before it begins. You're not journaling for memory. You're journaling for transformation. You're not writing for records. You're writing for clarity. Clarity about who you are when the heat is on. Clarity about the lies your fear tells you. Clarity about what your winning self actually looks like in action. That level of insight isn't available to those who only watch charts. It comes to those who observe the observer, you. And finally, journaling builds emotional accountability. When you write your actions down, you can't pretend you don't know. You can't excuse the slip-up. You can't fake growth. The journal is where truth lives, and truth, while uncomfortable, is your greatest trading edge because it lets you stop repeating the same emotional trades under new market disguises. Some trades don't come from strategy. They come from wounds. That's what Part 3 asks you to confront. The Daily Trading Coach reveals that many of your impulsive entries, revenge trades, or oversized positions are not technical errors. They're emotional eruptions. You aren't just reacting to price. You're reacting to something deeper, a trigger. And until you identify those triggers, you'll keep bleeding from the same invisible cuts. So, what is a trigger in trading? It's the specific emotional cue that knocks you out of your rational state. It might be a big red candle. It might be seeing your P&L dip into red. It might be a sudden news flash. Whatever it is, it hijacks your focus. Your breathing changes. Your decision-making narrows. You start seeing the market not as data, but as a threat or a promise. This is when traders stop thinking and start reacting. Steenbarger wants you to know. The problem isn't that you get emotional. The problem is that you don't know what sets it off. Self-awareness is everything. The only way to disarm a trigger is to see it as it's happening, not 5 minutes later. And that requires deliberate practice. Steenbarger introduces the idea of emotional tagging, noting what you feel and when. After a few sessions of journaling and mindfulness, patterns start appearing. You notice that low volume environments make you overtrade out of boredom. Or maybe sharp drawdowns activate childhood scarcity fears. This is real work. This is how you start seeing yourself not just as a trader, but as a system of emotional patterns. And once you tag your triggers, the next step is rehearsing your response. Because awareness without action changes nothing. It's not enough to say, I always panic when the trade goes against me. You have to train a new response. That might mean using breathing techniques to downshift your nervous system. It might mean stepping away for 2 minutes. It might mean writing out your intended action before taking it. Coaching is not just psychological, it's physical. Because the body remembers habits faster than the mind. One powerful concept from Steenbarger is this: triggers don't go away, they get rewired. You're not erasing your fear of loss. You're teaching your brain to respond differently when that fear arises. That's why practice is everything. Not chart time, not back tests, but practicing you. How you show up, how you reset, how you navigate moments of tilt. Most traders think their worst decisions come from stupidity. They don't. They come from unrecognized emotion. So here's the strategy. Build a trigger map. Literally list what sets you off: market conditions, headlines, losses, wins. Track how your body feels when it starts. Document how long it lasts. Then develop a response protocol. Think like an athlete. What do you do when you're down by 10? What do you tell yourself when your opponent gets in your head? Trading is performance under pressure, and pressure reveals what's untrained. By mapping your emotional triggers, you stop being surprised by yourself. You stop repeating the same confused state. You stop treating trading like a mystery and start treating it like a discipline. And you start building what Steenbarger calls emotional agility, the ability to recover quickly, shift gears, and return to clarity. Discipline is not control. Discipline is clarity in motion. When you hear the word discipline in trading, you might think of rigidity, of sticking to your rules no matter what, of being cold, mechanical, robotic. But part 4 of the Daily Trading Coach breaks that myth apart. Steenbarger redefines discipline not as suppressing emotion, but as channeling intention. You're not trying to crush your reactions. You're training your ability to pause, assess, and act on purpose. You've felt it before. You had a plan, a solid one. Maybe you waited hours for the setup. You saw the level, you knew the risk, and yet in the moment, it slipped. You hesitated. You chased. You cut early. Why? Not because the plan was bad, but because your process broke down under emotional pressure. That's what undisciplined trading looks like, when emotion overrides intention. The myth of perfect discipline hurts traders. It creates shame. You think you need to be flawless. And the first time you deviate from your plan, you spiral into self-blame. Steenbarger shifts this entirely. He says, discipline is not perfection. It's adaptation with awareness. You may lose discipline, but if you can recognize the loss quickly and reset, you're still winning the deeper game. That's where routines come in. Steenbarger urges you to build process rituals, structured steps that guide your decision-making regardless of what the market does. These rituals protect your mental energy. They act as behavioral anchors. Think: checklist before entry, breathing pause before execution, a forced 30-second review before increasing size. When the pressure rises, you fall back on the habits you've trained. And that's how you replace reactivity with process. And here's the nuance. You don't have to kill spontaneity. Good trading still requires flexibility. But flexibility without structure is chaos. You need a bounded freedom. You decide in advance what rules are non-negotiable and what areas allow for creative response. Steenbarger calls this a framework for flow. It's how you preserve emotional stability without becoming a rigid algorithm. A powerful example he shares is the use of micro goals. Instead of focusing on whether you make money, you focus on whether you execute a specific behavior. Waiting for confirmation, journaling immediately after exit, or walking away after 3 trades. These goals are measurable, controllable, and immediate. They give your brain something to win without needing the market to cooperate. That's discipline as empowerment, not punishment. But how do you actually build this type of process discipline? One repetition at a time. Steenbarger emphasizes repetition as the mother of mastery. You don't learn discipline from a book. You install it through daily reps. It might be as simple as reviewing your trade plan aloud each morning, or setting an alarm to pause and breathe every 90 minutes. The key is this: your discipline needs visible, physical practice. You don't just think disciplined, you act disciplined repeatedly until it becomes part of who you are. And setbacks? They're not signs of failure, they're stress tests. Every time you break discipline, you're given a feedback loop. What triggered it? What belief surfaced? What structural support was missing? Steenbarger encourages you to analyze these lapses not with shame, but with curiosity. Because discipline doesn't die from mistakes, it dies from ignoring them. You'll notice something powerful when you adopt this mindset. Trading becomes calmer, not easier, but less chaotic. You no longer carry the pressure of perfection. You carry the responsibility of preparation. You start trusting your process, not because it always wins, but because it always teaches. That's what transforms a trader from reactive to reflective. Steenbarger also addresses the role of environment. If your workspace is cluttered, your attention fragments. No, if your routine is reactive, your mindset will be too. Process isn't just mental, it's physical, environmental, sensory. What's your pre-market ritual? What do you listen to? What are you reinforcing in your posture, your tone, your breath? Discipline shows up in the details long before it shows up in execution. The book also warns about the subtle ways discipline erodes. Success can be as dangerous as failure. A few good wins, and suddenly you feel invincible. That's when you start skipping steps. You go from respecting your edge to assuming you are the edge. That's when the market humbles you. Steenbarger calls this the illusion of control. The only cure is daily recommitment. Because discipline isn't a decision you make once, it's a commitment you renew every session. Eventually, you realize something profound. Trading is less about control and more about calibration. You're not trying to force results, you're adjusting your mental state to match market reality. And that's what a strong process allows. When fear rises, you breathe. When doubt creeps in, you check your system. When temptation flares, you go back to your framework. This is not about removing emotion, it's about rerouting it. You're using structure to turn chaos into craft. The question is not whether you feel fear. The question is, what does your process guide you to do when fear shows up? The answer is not in your gut, it's in your training. Discipline isn't suppression, it's intention made repeatable. It's why pilots use checklists, athletes use routines, and musicians warm up the same way every day. They're not trying to be perfect, they're trying to stay aligned. So should you. Resilience isn't about staying calm, it's about bouncing back. Part 5 of the Daily Trading Coach drills into one of the least discussed but most decisive factors in trading success: emotional recovery. Because it's not your first losing trade that ruins you. It's how you behave after it. It's not the one mistake. It's the chain reaction that follows when you don't mentally reset. And what separates consistent traders from self-destructive ones isn't how often they fail. It's how they come back from failure. You've felt that internal drop before. A solid setup breaks down. You followed your rules, did everything right, and still lost. Or maybe worse, you broke your plan and now you're ashamed. What happens next is critical. Most traders carry that emotional residue forward. They jump into the next trade trying to win it back. They blame the market. They blame themselves. The spiral begins. Steenbarger warns, this is the moment that defines your future performance. Your next decision isn't about price action. It's about emotional capital. So how do you develop emotional resilience? It begins with permission. You have to allow yourself to feel the emotion without judgment. The pain of a loss is real. The frustration of underperformance is real. But bottling it up doesn't make you strong. It makes you volatile. Steenbarger introduces the idea of constructive experiencing. That means you feel it fully, but don't act on it blindly. You breathe with it, you write about it, you process it. Then, you choose your next move consciously. And resilience isn't just emotional, it's physiological. Your nervous system carries stress, even when your mind thinks you've moved on. That's why physical resets matter. Walks, breath work, stretching, and even sleep all play a role in your bounce back speed. You can't outthink adrenaline. You have to drain it. And you can't access your highest decision making state until your nervous system feels safe again. Steenbarger emphasizes a crucial truth: resilience is built before the loss, not after. Your habits determine how well you recover. If you have a structured review process, a clear self talk pattern, and a ritual for restoring emotional clarity, then you don't stay down long. You bleed, you clean the wound, and you get back to strategy. But if you're improvising in pain, you tend to make it worse. He also introduces a powerful technique: create a reset routine, a sequence of behaviors you execute the moment you feel emotionally destabilized. It could be pause for 3 minutes, breathe deeply, journal 2 sentences about what just happened, then reread your trading principles. This creates a psychological boundary. It stops the spiral from snowballing. It tells your mind, yes, we've been hit, but we are not broken. Another cornerstone of resilience is how you frame adversity. Steenbarger draws from cognitive psychology here. He explains how your interpretation of failure shapes your future behavior. If you see a loss as proof you're not good enough, you withdraw. If you see it as feedback, you adapt. This isn't just motivational fluff, it's neuroplasticity. The stories you tell yourself after failure literally shape the wiring of your brain. That's why elite traders aren't less emotional. They're more skilled at converting setbacks into structure. Resilience also grows from community. One of the most underused tools in trading is conversation. When you debrief with another trader, coach, or journal, you get perspective. You get reality checks. You break out of your inner echo chamber. Steenbarger encourages building feedback loops with people who support your growth, not just cheerleaders, but mirrors. People who can ask, what was your process here? And not just, how much did you make? But even more personal than community is identity. Resilient traders see themselves as builders, not gamblers. They view setbacks as data, not defeat. And they know the work isn't about winning every trade. It's about staying in the game long enough to get better. This identity shift is profound. Because if you see yourself as someone who adapts, then every loss becomes fuel. Every red day becomes a rep in your emotional gym. There's a subtle art to knowing when to push and when to pause. Resilience doesn't mean grinding through burnout. It means knowing when to step back, not as a retreat, but as a strategic reset. Steenbarger writes about psychological capital, your internal energy reserve. When it's low, your edge vanishes, no matter how smart you are. Protecting that capital is not weakness, it's maturity. He also talks about resilience rituals, small practices that keep your mindset clean. It might be a quote you read before every session, a playlist that grounds you, a meditation you use after big losses. These rituals are anchors. They remind you who you are, especially when the market tries to make you forget. Over time, they become part of your trading DNA. You don't just trade charts, you trade as the version of you who knows how to recover. Who are you when you trade? That's the question Part 6 throws at you like a cold splash of water. Because most traders never stop to ask it. You chase setups, you study charts, but you never pause to ask, what kind of person am I becoming through this process? Steenbarger calls this the trader's identity and says it's the silent engine driving every trade you take. You might think you're just executing strategy, but you're actually expressing self-concept. And that self-concept, if untrained, becomes your biggest liability. Here's what that means. If you see yourself as inconsistent, you will subconsciously gravitate toward erratic behavior. If you believe you're impulsive, you'll find a way to sabotage precision. If you carry the story that you're undisciplined, your brain will filter experiences through that lens until it becomes reality. It's not just the market testing you, it's your own self-image running the show. That's why traders with skill still fail, because they've never updated the story of who they are. Steenbarger explains this through identity psychology. You act in ways that confirm your internal narrative. Change the narrative and the actions follow. That's not to say you can fake discipline, but you can build identity through consistent behavior. Identity is shaped by repetition, not affirmation. So you don't just tell yourself, I'm a calm trader. You prove it through small, trackable moments of emotional regulation. Over time, your brain updates its map of who you are. This is why consistency matters so much. It's not just about results, it's about reinforcement. Every time you follow your plan, every time you pause before entry, every time you respect your stop, you are casting a vote for the trader you want to become. It's like carving grooves into your brain. Eventually, those grooves become identity. And identity is powerful because it works when willpower doesn't. You already know this from other parts of life. The person who sees themselves as a runner will go for a jog even when they don't feel like it, because it's who they are. The person who sees themselves as a professional shows up prepared even when motivation is low. In trading, the same is true. If you don't consciously shape your trading identity, the market will shape it for you, usually through fear, failure, and frustration. So how do you shape identity? Steenbarger recommends starting with behavior goals rather than outcome goals. Instead of, I want to make $500 this week, you say, I want to execute my plan 5 days in a row. Instead of, I want to avoid losses, you say, I want to document my emotional state before and after every trade. These are not just tasks, they are identity rituals, and they build credibility with yourself. That's how self-trust grows, not through hype, but through evidence. He also advises using visualization, not the fantasy kind, but the mental rehearsal kind. Picture yourself executing your edge under pressure. See yourself walking away from a bad trade. Hear yourself breathing through hesitation. This isn't woo-woo. It's cognitive programming. The brain doesn't distinguish well between imagined and real experience. And repeated visualization wires new pathways into your behavioral toolkit. But even more powerful than visualization is environment. Identity is context sensitive. Who you are in a calm room is not who you are in a noisy, chaotic space. That's why Steenbarger talks about trading hygiene, the design of your space, your screen layout, your audio input, even your posture. These elements cue your nervous system. They reinforce identity. You don't want to build discipline in disorder. You want your environment to whisper. This is where the focused version of you shows up. Then there's language. The words you use to describe yourself matter. Are you saying, I always mess this up, or I'm learning to respond better? Are you saying, I can't control myself, or I'm training my reactions? The subconscious mind listens, and over time, it obeys. Steenbarger encourages you to track your inner dialogue and interrupt the narratives that keep you small. One technique he suggests is writing a letter to your ideal trader self. Describe how they think, how they react, how they recover. Then ask, what would this version of me do right now? This isn't fiction, it's future memory. It's rehearsal for the identity you're stepping into. And once that image is burned into your brain, your behaviors begin to align with it. But be careful. Identity isn't fixed. It's either being reinforced or rewritten every day. That's why lapses matter, not because they break your streak, but because they send a message to your subconscious. When you break your plan and justify it, you're voting for inconsistency. When you skip journaling and say, it's no big deal, you're voting for avoidance. The market doesn't care about these details, but your self-image does. Eventually, you reach a tipping point. You stop trading like a person chasing outcomes and start trading like a person living up to a standard. You stop needing motivation because you have momentum. You stop asking, can I? And start saying, this is what I do. That shift is not flashy. It's not dramatic, but it's everything. Because identity doesn't just shape how you trade, it shapes how you interpret the outcome of the trade. A losing trade doesn't shake someone with a strong identity, it reinforces their framework. In the Daily Trading Coach, Steenbarger asks you to stop obsessing over what's broken and start asking, what's already working that I can do more of? Most traders spend 90% of their energy analyzing mistakes, dissecting failures, and berating themselves for what they didn't do. But performance psychology tells a different story. Growth accelerates when you build on what you already do well. Strengths, once recognized and reinforced, become your highest leverage assets. You see, traders often operate from a deficit mindset. I need to fix my overtrading. I need to stop hesitating. I need to quit breaking rules. The focus becomes a loop of correction. But here's the trap. What you focus on expands. If you stare too long at what's wrong, you start believing you are what's wrong. And that mindset erodes confidence. Steenbarger flips this. He says, start your review by identifying what went right. What setups worked? What mindset served you? When did you act with discipline, with clarity, with presence? This doesn't mean you ignore your weaknesses, but it means you contextualize them. If you're only hunting for errors, you miss the foundation of your growth. You overlook the systems, the instinctive pattern recognition, the quiet improvements you've been making. Steenbarger wants you to document your strengths like assets in a portfolio. They are your leverage points, the places where effort turns into flow. And the more you double down on those areas, the more energy you free up for refinement elsewhere. One technique he suggests is a strengths inventory. After each week, list the top 3 things you did well. Not just trades, but behaviors. Maybe it was waiting for confirmation. Maybe it was taking a walk instead of forcing a trade. Maybe it was catching yourself mid-tilt and resetting. These are not soft skills. These are high-performance signals. When you train your attention on these wins, you're reinforcing the trader you want to become. And it's not just about self-esteem. It's neuroscience. The brain builds habits faster when feedback is positive. That's why athletes and elite performers review their highlights, not just their errors. They internalize success so it becomes automatic. As a trader, you must do the same. You're not just troubleshooting problems, you're conditioning excellence. Steenbarger also challenges you to find your style-based strengths. Not all traders are wired the same. Some excel at fast scalps, others at longer holds. Some thrive in high volatility, others in calm trend days. Your job is not to master every style. Your job is to master your fit. That means studying your best trades, understanding the context, and optimizing your strategy around it. That's how you trade like yourself, not a YouTuber or a chat room hero. This includes psychological strengths too. Maybe your gift is patience. Maybe it's pattern recognition. Maybe it's emotional detachment. Identify it, celebrate it, use it. You'd be shocked how many traders ignore their edge because they're busy chasing someone else's. Steenbarger says, your edge is not just what you trade, it's how you trade it. Your temperament, your strengths, your rhythm. That's the secret recipe. And the clearer you are about it, the less noise you'll chase. He also invites you to build strength rituals. These are intentional moments where you remind yourself of your advantages. Before each session, review your past successful trades, not for ego, but for memory. Feel what it was like to trade well. Prime your mind to expect that state again. These rituals are a form of psychological priming. You're telling your nervous system, this is who we are. This is what we do. And when you face challenge, your strengths become your stabilizers. On a drawdown day, it might not be your strategy that saves you. It might be your ability to pause, or your ability to zoom out, or your trust in your prep. These are not secondary traits. They are the foundation under pressure. And when cultivated, they reduce the emotional cost of trading. That said, amplifying strengths requires boundaries. Just because you're good at one thing doesn't mean you push it to excess. A scalper who overtrades loses their edge. A swing trader who holds too long turns patience into paralysis. So Steenbarger emphasizes calibrated growth. Know your lane. Expand from your base, but don't abandon it. Strengths flourish when they're refined, not stretched until they snap. Another insight he shares: your strengths evolve. What worked for you in your first year might not serve you in your fifth. That's why reflection never stops. You are a changing organism in a changing market. Stay curious, stay observant, and always ask, what is now my highest leverage point? And here's the most powerful part. When you trade from strength, you reduce friction. Decisions feel cleaner. Execution feels smoother. You're not second-guessing every click. You're aligned with yourself. And that internal alignment creates something rare in trading: peace. Not because you never lose, but because you know you're operating from truth. Not because they don't know their edge, not because their plan is wrong, but because they hesitate, second guess, or sabotage themselves in the moment of action. Steenbarger calls this the execution gap, the distance between knowing and doing. And if you don't close that gap, you'll never become consistent. He wants you to understand something crucial. Poor execution is not a trading problem, it's a performance problem. It's not about not knowing what to do. It's about not being able to do it consistently under stress. You could have the best plan in the world, but if you freeze when the moment comes or chase because you got triggered, that plan becomes worthless. So the goal here is to turn execution into a habit, something trained, not guessed. And how do you do that? The same way athletes do: through drills. Steenbarger advocates rehearsing execution like a skill. That means setting up simulation trades, journaling exact entry and exit plans, visualizing your sequence, even practicing your breathing. Execution doesn't begin when the candle forms. It begins before the session starts. It's a performance, and it requires warm-up, routine, and repetition. One method he teaches is the mental check-in. Before each trade, ask, what am I seeing? What's the setup? What's my entry, stop, and target? And how am I feeling? If you can't answer all four clearly, you don't press the button. This creates a pattern interrupt, a pause before action. That pause is the buffer where mistakes die, and over time, the repetition of this check-in becomes muscle memory. Steenbarger also pushes you to track execution as a separate metric. Don't just track wins or losses, track whether you followed your plan. Did you enter where you said? Did you manage risk as intended? Did you exit on signal, not emotion? This turns every session into a feedback loop. You're not judging yourself by outcome, you're judging yourself by fidelity to process. And that shift changes everything. He also encourages you to reduce variables. Most traders think they need more setups, more timeframes, more tools, but performance improves when complexity decreases. Find one or two setups you trust, master them, drill them, build consistency. Because confidence doesn't come from variety, it comes from repetition. You want execution to be boringly precise, like a pilot running a pre-flight checklist. That's how you get calm under pressure. Now here's the hard truth. Even with the best prep, you'll still break down sometimes. You'll still chase. You'll still freeze. You'll still overtrade. But Steenbarger says that's not failure. That's data. Every lapse is a chance to learn, but only if you debrief. After the session, ask, where did I deviate? Why? What was I feeling? What triggered it? What would I do differently? This is how you close the loop. You stop making the same errors because you keep extracting the lessons. And eventually, your brain rewires. You start seeing hesitation before it happens. You start catching tilt in real time. You start choosing process over impulse, not perfectly, but reliably. Execution becomes less emotional, more automatic. You trade through noise instead of reacting to it. And that's when everything changes. Because now, you're no longer trading to survive. You're performing to evolve. But Steenbarger adds a final layer. Execution isn't just mechanics, it's intention. Why are you taking this trade? Is it out of alignment or clarity? Are you acting from fear, boredom, FOMO, or from conviction, prep, and plan? That intention matters, because even if the trade loses, if it was taken from the right state, it builds identity. And identity, as we've said, drives everything. By now, you've absorbed the principles: self-coaching, emotional regulation, strengths-based development, and performance-based execution. But if you're still relying on someone else's strategy, someone else's indicators, someone else's playbook, you're still not trading like yourself. That's the leap this chapter demands. Because the ultimate edge is not a secret setup or a magic algorithm. It's the internalization of everything you've learned into a process that is uniquely your own. You're not here to mimic, you're here to craft. Steenbarger insists, no great performer copies, they synthesize. You are not here to become a clone of a successful trader. You are here to build a framework that fits your cognition, your attention span, your energy rhythm, your risk tolerance, your lifestyle. And that starts with studying your own data. Your best trades, your worst ones. When you thrived, when you failed. You reverse engineer patterns. What times of day do you trade best? What setups have the best expectancy for you? What mindsets lead to consistent execution? The answers are not in a course, they're in your experience. He encourages you to build a trading playbook, not a rigid rule book, but a dynamic manual. Inside it, you log your favorite setups with screenshots. You write the conditions where you execute best. You include mental cues, physical routines, risk parameters. You refine it over time. This is your trading operating system. And unlike someone else's PDF or course, it's alive. It evolves with you. It grows with your awareness, and it becomes the spine of your process. This playbook is not just for clarity, it's for conviction. When you're staring at a possible setup, you're not deciding from scratch. You're matching it against your own database. You're saying, yes, I've seen this. I've traded this. I trust this. That reduces hesitation. It creates commitment. It separates gamblers from operators. Because in trading, process is the only thing you can repeat. Outcome is noise. But process? That's your edge. Steenbarger makes a critical distinction here. A playbook doesn't eliminate discretion. It channels it. You're not trading like a robot. You're applying judgment within a structured environment. And that's where mastery lives. You're agile, but grounded. You're adaptive, but principled. You have freedom, but you operate within your blueprint. He also pushes you to test your ideas. Not every setup belongs in your playbook. Some look good in hindsight, but don't hold up in real time. That's why you simulate. That's why you forward test. That's why you journal. Your process isn't fixed. It's a laboratory. And every session gives you new samples. If you're listening, if you're reviewing, your playbook becomes sharper each week. This is where most traders get stuck. They read, watch, consume, but never build. They have knowledge, but not integration. Part 9 says, stop outsourcing your process. Stop waiting for someone to give you permission. Start owning your path. Even if it's messy, even if it's slow. Because once you craft your own playbook, you gain something nobody can take away: self-trust. And that trust becomes your compass. In the chaos of the market, when nothing is clear, when fear surges or greed blinds, your playbook becomes the anchor. It reminds you who you are, how you trade, what you don't touch. And that clarity saves you from impulsive errors. It doesn't guarantee wins, but it guarantees integrity. And integrity, over time, stacks into confidence, confidence into conviction, conviction into consistency. That's what this chapter is about. Not strategies, not tools, not hacks, but structure. Personalized, evolving, tested structure. You stop following and start building. You stop wandering and start crafting. And in that act of creation, you stop being a hobbyist and become a professional. And finally, Steenbarger asks you to imagine, what if every week you updated your playbook with lessons from your journal? What if every quarter you refined your setups with hard data? What if every session you aligned your execution with your playbook cues? What would happen to your P&L, not just in money, but in mastery? You find the whole human being behind every decision, every impulse, every moment of fear or restraint. This chapter is about using trading as a path not just to profit, but to wholeness. Because when you grow through trading, you carry that growth everywhere else in your life. Steenbarger believes the best traders are not just market-focused. They are self-developed. They cultivate curiosity. They engage with life beyond screens and charts. They read. They build relationships. They grow their emotional intelligence. Because when your inner world expands, your capacity for patience, perspective, and resilience in the market expands with it. And that's not fluff. That's edge. That's what keeps you steady when volatility surges. That's what helps you wait for the A-plus setup instead of jumping into noise. That's what allows you to lose without crumbling, to win without overreaching. In fact, he points out something critical. Most performance collapses don't start on the chart. They start in your life. Burnout, neglect, isolation, poor sleep, conflict. If your personal life is chaotic, it will bleed into your trading. There is no firewall. The mind doesn't compartmentalize that cleanly, which is why he emphasizes your well-being is not separate from your edge. It is the foundation of it. If you feel disconnected, emotionally depleted, or chronically reactive, it's not just a lifestyle issue, it's a risk factor. This is why he encourages daily renewal rituals, not just reviews, but restorations. Journaling not just what went wrong, but what you're grateful for. Walking without your phone, doing something playful, calling someone who lifts you. These aren't distractions, these are spiritual pit stops. They refill the parts of you that markets drain. And if you skip them, you trade from depletion. And depleted traders chase. Depleted traders self sabotage. Depleted traders quit. But centered traders, they show up, they return to their process, they recover quickly, and they remain present session after session. He urges you to reflect on this. Who are you becoming through trading? Is it making you more focused or more frantic? More honest or more avoidant? More purposeful or more reactive? Because in the end, your P&L is a side effect. The real reward is who you become in the process. Are you cultivating depth or just collecting data? Now, are you building capacity for uncertainty or clinging to control like a security blanket? One way to bring this full circle is by evolving your journaling practice. Earlier in the journey, it was tactical, log trades, track errors, refine execution. But now it becomes philosophical. What's your emotional state today? What patterns from your life are replaying in the market? What's your vision not just for trading, but for being? Steenbarger's deeper mission is clear. Trading is not just about markets, it's about meaning. If you treat it only as a way to make money, you'll extract profits, but miss the transformation. And self-mastery doesn't mean perfection, it means feedback. It means using your emotions as signals, not verdicts. It means staying radically honest with yourself, especially when it's uncomfortable. It means becoming your own best coach, not by being harsh, but by being committed. Committed to growth, committed to clarity, committed to the long game. Steenbarger ends on a challenge. Don't just use trading to build wealth. Use it to build character. Let it shape your patience. Let it refine your attention. Let it stretch your humility. Let it sharpen your intuition. Let it reveal your deepest fears and teach you how to face them with clarity and choice. Let it make you wiser, because the trader who grows as a human outlasts the trader who chases as a technician. Markets change, tools break, but a refined mind endures. And so, part 10 circles back to where it all began, self-coaching. Except now, you're not just journaling setups. You're journaling your evolution. You're not just logging data. You're exploring self-leadership. You're crafting a vision not just for how to trade, but for how to live. Because the markets will always be uncertain. But your growth, that's yours to own. Every final lesson. That's the final lesson. Everything else is noise. What if you started treating every trading session as a reflection of your inner state, not just your market analysis? What if your drawdowns became invitations to reflect deeper instead of excuses to abandon your process? What if your winning streaks reminded you not of your superiority, but of your responsibility to manage success with grace and structure? These are the shifts that separate temporary performers from lifelong professionals. Because ultimately, trading is never just about price action. It's about presence. It's about becoming. So as you close this final lesson, ask yourself, are you building a career or chasing a phase? Are you growing roots or just collecting screenshots of green days? Are you showing up to the market with presence or reacting out of habit? These questions are not meant to shame. They're meant to wake you, because the market rewards awareness. It punishes avoidance. And it mirrors back exactly what you bring to it. When you change the way you show up, the market begins to reflect that change. So stay grounded, stay curious, stay intentional, and above all, stay committed to becoming the version of yourself that doesn't just succeed in trading, but thrives as a human being in the process. That's the true finish line.